can we talk a bit about Yuri on Ice? Because we've never talked about it.
We can talk about. I mean, like this would be our fourth tangent this episode. But sure, let's talk about Yuri on Ice.
Yuri on Ice is it doesn't. There is no homophobia in Yuri on Ice. It is about two men who happen to fall in love through skating, and there's no tangible homophobia in the world. Nobody makes a big deal about it ever. It's not commented upon. These two men are in a relationship with each other. They get kinda like married or promised to each other, like in the second last episode, and it's genuinely beautiful. And it's very pretty. It's good. And you had a lot of people like honest, and like a lot of people are like, honestly, I'm glad that there's no homophobia in Yuri on Ice, because that would have been exhausting. That would have dragged the plot down, and it would have made it a less fun show to watch. And that's good. And it doesn't work for necessarily every piece of drama. You know, like it wouldn't work for, say, Oscar winner Moonlight. That wouldn't have made any sense, because where's the conflict? But in Yuri on Ice, one, it would have dragged the plot down, and two, it's exhausting. And it's like, if you want to have, you're here to watch skating and two men who love each other, and and it's just,
it's not relevant.
It's not relevant.
It's not relevant to the plot.
Yeah, and I understand, and the director said this was a very conscious decision on my part. I didn't want them to face any homophobia or anything like that, and I wanted to show this world and this community as supportive, as inclusive, and it not really mattering that two men fell in love. And it just, like, the thing that matters is that they love each other, and not that their love is taboo, because it isn't. Which I think is, I mean, I'm paraphrasing a lot, but yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely is it relevant to the story that you want to tell? And in this case, because we're talking about an interactive medium, is it relevant to the world that you want your players to be interacting with? And I'm like, I don't think it is, personally.
And like, I would say that...
And you were like, well, this is the thing, is that both of us could come to different conclusions from the same, like, prompt.
Yeah.
I'd be like, nearly all of our playgroup is queer.
Yeah.
I want to explore the possibility space of a world where homophobia and heterosexism are non-issues. Whereas you were like, nearly all of our playgroup is queer. I want to allow these people to explore a world where they continually get to see, like, positive stories about people like Beth.
Yeah.
Neither of these things is wrong.
No, they're not. They're both right. It's fine. And and even, you can even be up for that on, like, different, like days. Like, sometimes I want a story that I'm like, yes, that's what it's like in this world, being LGBT, and it sucks, but sometimes we win, and this makes me feel really good. And sometimes I'm like, I don't want to engage with this discourse. I just want to have fun and explore this fantasy world, or this science fiction world, or this post-apocalyptic world on my own terms, and not have to, like, constantly be challenged because I'm this or because I'm that. Which is sometimes what makes, like, which is what made Dragon Age Origins really annoying, because it's like, sexism doesn't exist in Dragon Age, and I'm like, awesome. And then you do...
Yeah, and then you're like, it literally does, though. Here is all of the evidence in the text that it does.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, God. And
I actually find, like... Because there's a whole load of games that do that at character creation, right? They have this, like, weird sort of, like, platitude that they say, where it's like, the sex or gender of your character will not affect your abilities in any way, and the two are treated largely the same in the world of Fleedledog or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I'll be the judge of
I'll
that.
be the
thanks.
fucking judge of that, asshole. And then, like I think it's, like, almost immediately when you do, is it the female noble storyline? It's, like, the, like, first few, like, moments of that game, you'd be like, when are you gonna get married? I'm like, and you don't get that dialogue if you're a boy. Like, I think someone has, like, a boy, like, they're talking about Nathaniel Howe, aren't they? I was like, oh, you should get married, like, but you should get married to Thingy Howe's son, and, like, I really, like, you wouldn't be suggesting this if I were a man, which I think is shitty, by the way, because Nathaniel Howe definitely bisexual. But anyway, the point is it's just, like, it's not, and I think there are points where it's like, oh, I wasn't expecting a girl, and I'm like, I thought we were supposed to...
Yeah.
Why
this
wouldn't you
is why I
expect a girl?
hate those things. I'm like, no, you're just saying that, and it's automatically disingenuous, even if it's true.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you've shown me none of the content of your game at this point.
Yeah.
I know nothing. And And that's why it's always disingenuous to say it in any more than a mechanical capacity, because I don't know that you're telling the truth.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time I've seen evidence that you basically don't give a shit about the veracity of the comment that you're making here. So why would I believe it now?
Yeah. It's like, and it's not like Dragon Age Origins does that for everything. Like, it goes, if you play an elf, it's like some people are going to treat you like shit because you're an elf, and you're like, okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And that
But
does
to
happen.
be clear, I don't think this is just a problem with Dragon Age Origins, because I've seen that kind of message in multiple games that then have problems. Like, the Elder Scrolls games, for instance, generally, I think Morrowind at least has that message, like that kind of message, and I think the others do as well. And it's like, Skyrim is actually, like, okay for it.
I think Fallout 4 is as well. I'm not sure about the other Fallout games.
Fallout is kind of weird, because Fallout, like, does have... Sometimes, I think Fallout has a problem where it doesn't really know which of us it wants to be.
Yeah.
When it comes to sexism.
No, yeah, you're right.
Like, it doesn't actually know, like, do I want this to be like a... Because it's like, we want to be... I think this is the problem, is that Fallout is set in, like, the ruined versions of a world from 2100 that is trying to be the world of 1950.
Yeah.
So it's like, are we progressive because it's the future, or regressive because we're trying to be the past?
Yeah.
And, I mean, in fairness, that's a difficult problem.
Yeah.
I just don't think they've handled it incredibly well.
Yeah.
But I think definitely, like, you went across Morrowind, and it's like, a lot of the time, actually, there are, like, a lot of, like, female warriors, and there's, like, a goddess, like female heads of state.
Yeah.
I think I can't actually remember if Almalexia is a head of state. I don't think she is. I think the king is the head of state of Morrowind. But that's not the point. The point is, there are a lot of women in interesting and relevant roles.
Yeah.
That said, a lot of the time, as I remember, and I will probably actually need to go back and play the game again to be sure. The vast majority of housekeeping role persons were women, and I feel like that was a mistake rather than, like, just them not thinking.
Yeah.
Because I feel like especially, like, in more recent times, like, they try... That's one of the times that Bethesda have actually tried, right? Because you see a lot of warrior women in Skyrim, and sometimes you do see like a fair number of men in domestic roles who, like, take them seriously. And it doesn't look that weird. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine to do. And I've forgotten the point I was going to make here. But I think basically I remember seeing that message in Morrowind, like the first time I played Morrowind, which, oh God, was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay. And cringing at it even then, because I was like, you can't say that this early.
Yeah.
It's fine if you want to tell me that, like, the gender I pick is not going to affect my character mechanically, but you can't say that with regard to, like, the world you've created, because I don't know whether you're being honest.
Yeah. I think I'd like to think... I do want how I present women in 2F now. I've started thinking about it, and it's like, I mean, most servants you meet have been butlers, so they generally are men, but there's no saying a woman can't be a butler, I suppose.
No, not really. Yeah, I don't see any reason why that couldn't be the case.
I'm really sure. I mean, like, you've met... all the Lilyhammer clan of women, and they're all in militaristic...
That's true, although, like... The problem with that is that, like, at least from my perspective, the Lilyhammers are a joke.
No,
right?
yeah, they are a little bit, yeah.
They're a reference to Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny from Pokemon. At least, so it makes sense that they would all be women.
Yeah.
Except one? Wasn't there one who wasn't?
Yeah, there's the dad, the dad, the daddy hammer, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, whilst I don't want to discount that out of hand, I feel that also, like, it does sort of get, like, an exception pass.
Yeah. But, they are...
Because it's a reference to something else in another piece of media.
Again, though, like Pokemon, all of their police officers generally were women. I mean, yeah, they were all Officer Jennies, but...
Yeah, I do kind of like that Pokemon has sort of, like, taken that weird idiosyncrasy that came from, like, the technical constraints of the original game.
Yeah.
And rather than just being like, no, it just happened that all of the like, police officers and nurses look the same in Pokemon Red. They're like, no, they're all cousins and they look exactly the same.
Yeah.
That's just a thing you're going to have to get used to.
But, I mean, I think as well, there's probably, like, a limit, because I don't remember there being many police officers in the games. I think there was maybe one or two. And I do believe they were male sprites, actually. like the inclusion and evolution of female characters in Pokemon is
maybe if that's the case,
yeah.
like I don't know a lot about Pokemon. Maybe they included Officer Jenny to make the Nurse Joy thing less weird.
Maybe, but I think also like like this like Pokemon nowadays it's got a bigger budget. The anime when it started, it was not given a huge budget, and
oh, are you feeling like they didn't have the budget to have somebody draw up another police officer model?
yeah, like drop multiple police officer models and stuff like that because that stuff can be really taxing actually. Like designing different characters all the time, like or every town you go to and every time they interact with law enforcement, there's another police officer.
Yeah.
That could be like...
And it's like, they're not actively doing anything illegal, which means that we can't have them be followed by a police officer, which would, like, help and not make us have this problem. But we still need them to have scenes where they interact with law enforcement.
Yeah, so I think it's more that arises from the budget limitations of an anime and just saying, okay, well, we'll just have one character who we reuse over and over again and just say they're all related, and it'd be like the Nurse Joy thing. The Nurse Joy thing is definitely a running joke carried over from the games, though. Like...
Yeah, because like the sprite of the nurse from the Pokemon Center is always the same sprite, and it's a very striking sprite.
Yeah.
So it's funny and also cool, and like it's great.
But yeah, like that's why. But as well, in a weird way, it's also that I won't say technical limitations of D&D. I don't necessarily want to think up a new name and a new character description for every law enforcement character you interact with. I don't want every figure of authority you be to be like their own unique, different character. Maybe I'm just like, Lilyhammer's kind of a cool name, and why not? Like, why not have it not all just be similar looking women who differ slightly in appearance occasionally, but they all are... In fairness, related.
I feel like the Lilyhammers have been very different in how they interact with us.
No, yeah, I mean, like, I've always tried to make it so that they've got different personalities, but like, it's like...
yeah, no, that's fine.
But like, I would hope that my women are diverse and have differing jobs. I mean, like the head of
I hope that as well. Yeah. Like, I always worry that I'm doing that. Like, was it like 17% thing?
Yeah.
Where I think I have a lot of female characters, and it's just like I'm kind of worrying that I'm like inflating that number in my head because a lot of my male characters are so boring that I forget that they exist.
I think as well. Like, I always sort of figure it. Like, I know I'm not great. I'm working on a webcomic at the minute, and I'll say, like, obviously that it's about disabled superheroes, so obviously there's a lot of disabled characters in it. And I would say that I'm generally good at representing the different people from different racial backgrounds and cultural backgrounds. And I'm, pretty good with, a good equal percentage of women. But I do admit that I don't have a lot of transgender characters in my story. And I don't think of that particularly so much as a problem, because it's more about... make sure it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality of those characters. So I think if you don't have a lot of women in your story, that's okay, but like
which is also good like, are they, not to say that those two things are entirely separate all the time.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Seen a frustratingly large number of problems with TV shows and books and whatever of like people like for instance, an author experiences a problem with pushing too many like separate character conflicts onto a single transgender character, for instance.
Yeah.
So much so that they become a stereotype, and it's like you could actually have avoided this if you had more than one of these.
Oh
characters.
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree. If you have a group of people, you're representing a group of people in the story, make sure you have at least more than one of them. Like, if you have a gay person...
Naturally, this is a lot easier to do if you have like a very large scope piece of work.
Yeah.
Like a tabletop role-playing setting.
Yeah.
Where you can just have like... Because, I mean, like, when you write fiction, like when you write like books or TV or films or stuff, you have to be sparing with the amount of new information that you bring in.
Yeah.
Whereas I think that's a restriction you don't really have in tabletop role-playing because it's a piece of interactive media that is supposed to be experienced over a much longer time. And I think even video games, to be honest, kind of have that problem more than tabletop role-playing does. So it's an excellent environment to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, but it's like, I'm acutely aware that, I've introduced Bran and he's a trans man, and I know I can't believe that rhymed. But I know as well...
We love Bran.
Yeah,
Bran's cool.
But I also know that, he's a very specific narrative of his own experience within the world I've created.
Mm.
So it's about also making sure to have you meet someone later on who's also transgender, maybe another trans man or someone who's non-binary or a trans woman, and go, this is someone with a completely different experience, and not to do it for show, but to just be like.
I don't know how relevant this is.
Yeah.
I guess like I will talk about this because if you're thinking, hey, of the two methodologies described, I think I like Alex's better. One of the problems actually that I have run into, and given how many of the group again are transgender, I feel guilty about this, is including transgender characters in my in my setting. They basically have to be non-binary, because otherwise, unless they're challenging like the real world assumptions of the players, I don't want to say that those characters are defined by their oppression, because they're not, and that's a horrible thing to say. Basically what I mean is there is no reason why this would come up. Like why in conversation that topic would come up, or that I'd be comfortable like just telling people, like telling the players about it as like an aspect of the character.
Yeah.
Unless it came up in the context of them being oppressed.
Yeah.
And that is a problem, because it makes it incredibly difficult for me to introduce trans characters.
Yeah.
Or at least, like, characters who are explicitly stated in the text to be trans.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole source of this problem is that there's a huge, like, wealth of characters that I have introduced in the past who could be transgender.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like I probably actually only have, like, a single-digit number of characters who definitely are not transgender.
No, yeah, I get you.
And that's basically
I
like the group that the groups that are like heterosexual couples that have children. And even then, it's kind of like.
Yeah, I mean, it's something like, I mean, in my universe, I've established like Baldur's Gate style. There are potions that people take that can change their assigned sex,
which is another problem.
And that's
like,
that.
Maybe that's
yeah, like. And it's like, as well, it's not like, like you've probably, like, I mean, like, yeah, you probably have met transgender characters before.
Right, exactly.
But it's like, it's not came up because you've interacted with me in a very minimal way, or it hasn't been relevant to the conversation, because it's not always relevant to the conversation. And just like,
I think,
you've
like,
met.
If you're listening, like the hypothetical person that I was talking about, this is not necessarily wrong. And I hope that you can understand how, in theory, in perhaps a better world, that would be fine and correct, but it is actually like kind of a problem now, because it gives you this impression, because the only real aspect, like the only real interaction with the world that the players have is through what the DM says, that there's this absence of these people when there isn't, or there needn't be, but it's just that there's no reason why that would ever come up. Whereas when you have a world like Beth's, by comparison, there's a really obvious reason why it might come up.
Yeah. And like, it's not like, it's like, it's mentioned, like, someone being gay or bi, it's not like just like, it is a difficult thing to portray without going oppression, because it's not like there are obvious, like, do you know what I mean?
Actually, I don't have that problem at all. I know portraying people as gay or bi, I find like significantly easier, because there's a really obvious.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, because like, you can have two men be in a relationship and like, yes, I understand that, but if a trans woman, for example, is in a relationship with a cis man, you're just gonna be like, oh, that's just a straight couple.
Well, I mean,
until that trans woman, it is, but that trans woman go, well, to add. But that trans woman isn't going to go, well, to add more flavour to it, it turns out transgender.
And that would be a
They're not
stupid
going to
thing
do that.
do.
That's not how transgender people
That's
are.
not how transgender people are in real life, and it's a stupid thing to do from a narrative standpoint. It's kind of insulting, actually.
Yeah. It's like, so basically, in a D&D game, what you do then is you go, oh, by the way, heads up, just before I introduce this character, I just want you all to know this character is a trans woman. I think that's pretty cool, and I know you guys are going to think it's pretty cool. Just wanted to let you know that's a thing, and your friends go, awesome, cool, and then maybe they can bring it up or whatever, but that's the only way to do it.
Yeah, and it's
really.
Not a great way, to be honest.
No,
I'm not really a huge fan of that way.
No,
but if it's what you have to do, I guess it's what you have to do. On the other hand, like, another way you could do it is if one of your players is playing a transgender character,
Oh yeah, no, this is always way easier when the
which they
player's
might
doing
do, especially if that
Yeah.
kind if I say that kind of issue, that's a horrible thing to say. Like, trans people are people; they are a people that
Yeah.
exist.
They're people
Like, it's
with
not
an issue,
they're not
yeah.
they're not an issue like, I don't know, gun control or water fluoridation. Like, they are a group
Yeah.
of individual people who exist in real life. But if the visibility of transgender people, I suppose, is an issue that is important to your players, quite likely
Yeah.
if one of your players is transgender themselves, they might play a transgender character, in which case you could have another, like have a transgender NPC, like, have a scene where they commiserate with them about oppression, or if there isn't any of that, just, like, talk about trans stuff.
Yeah, just like high five, yeah,
Like, presumably
how's it
this
going?
player is
Yeah.
your friend and will have spoken about some things that you can use as material for that if you are a cis person.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like I think that's always helpful as well. Like if you have friends from a particular either political background or background of being a human, you can just go, hey, how do I put this into the game? And they'll be like, oh, like this.
And it's
And you're
much
like, thank
easier
you.
to ask
You
that
know,
of your friends, because, like, it's kind
your
of
friends
not
are here to help
cool
you
to
grow.
ask other people who are from a particular minority to basically proofread your work when
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I don't really know what kind of research to do, or I've done my research but I don't know if it's correct. Could you just, like, do this for free? Whereas,
Yeah.
like, asking your friends is still kind of scumbaggy to do when you're not paying them if it's your writing, but if it's like
Yeah.
an RPG that they are participating in, then there's no real problem with, like, asking them, am I doing this right? Especially since,
Yeah.
given it's an improvised experience, they're going to expect you to make more fuck ups than if it were like a published piece of work.
Yeah, I think and this also goes for like I hope we don't diverge too much, but fan fiction. If you're in a group of people who are in a fandom or on a Discord server or in a community or forum or whatever, and go, hey, I want to portray, I don't know, this issue in the next fic. What are your opinions on this? Because there's a lot of discussion of, I won't get too vague. I'll talk a bit about Voltron. It's fine. About whether one of the characters, Keith, is he Japanese, is he Korean, or is he some other type of East Asian, or is he not East Asian, in fact, and he's just sort of drawn that way. And there's a good amount of discussion about it. I personally think he's of Japanese descent. I know not everyone agrees with that. And I think that that's fine. By the way, I don't begrudge anyone who thinks differently.
Especially since there's, like, been no explicit confirmation in the show, one assumes.
Yeah. There's, like, we don't even actually know his actual canonical surname in this universe. We know that it's, in theory, Kogane, because that's what it's always been in other adaptations.
But it's never actually been said in Voltron Legendary Defender, which is this version
it's
of Voltron.
The only people who have full names, as far as we know, are Shiro, who's Takashi Shirogane, so he's Japanese, despite what some fans sometimes say that he's white.
I did see, like, the permanent eyeliner
that old-fashioned French name, Shirogane.
And I was just like, you can't actually see what I'm doing, so imagine that image macro of Nicolas Cage with his, like, clasped palms over his face. Just...
Yeah. But like there is a lot of it would be Lance, obviously, that we like that it's came out, oh, he's Cuban, but most of the time in other adaptations his surname is McLean. Now personally I don't see any issue with still having him be called Lance McLean in fanfic if you want to give him a surname, because it's not like Scottish people have never married Cuban people.
But then
before.
again, it's also not like Japanese people have never married into, like, French families. So I feel that kind of detracts from your earlier point, even though I'm kind of being, like, deliberately pedantic.
Yeah, I know what you mean though, but like it wouldn't make, like, if Lance did have the surname McLean in canon, it wouldn't make him any less Cuban.
That's fair, and also it's not quite the same thing, because Lance having the surname McLean doesn't. I don't even know. I don't think Cubans are white. I don't think they call themselves white. But also, like Shiro being from France would not make him less Asian.
Yeah, like
so. I am being disingenuous, and that is in fact not exactly the same thing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just like Anyway, but there's some people like the idea of Keith being Korean because he's voiced by Stephen Yeun. I hope that's how you pronounce it. Who is, of course, of Korean descent. Well, he's an American Asian. You know.
Where are
Um,
you going with this,
what
Beth?
was what even was my original point? Oh yeah, so and and I remember having this conversation like I was going to make Keith Japanese in this fanfic. What do we like what's the opinion on that? Do we think that's the predominant headcanon? I'm concerned that I'm going to step on someone's toes or I'm going to like
Really? In
invalidate
the
someone's
Voltron
opinion.
Legendary Defender fandom, you were worried about stepping on someone's toes.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I don't know why you would ever think that.
Hey, we vagued about. Look, we should always vague about them when we say this. Okay. Anyway, um, and and the discussion was like, oh, I like him being Korean, and then someone just went, it doesn't, and then someone went, it doesn't really matter if you think
Yeah.
he's Asian.
Well, I mean, I
That's
feel like if I were asked a question like
that's the
that,
predominant
like I
thing.
would say, what context are you planning to talk about this in? Because unless you have to make explicit
Yeah.
reference to his like national background, it probably doesn't matter, and you should just
Oh,
not
I,
bring it
I
up.
remember what it was. I was he had a sort of made up mother, but like like it was like an AU. So he had a mum in the fic, and I was like, what do I call her? Are we gonna say that like I've said that she has a Japanese name. Are we okay? And someone went, I kind of like there was a bit of back and forth, and someone went, ultimately though, it's not really set in stone and it's not canon, and what
Right?
you
Yeah.
decide like is up to you. And I was like, oh shit, you're right.
And I can kind of like understand sort of the issue, like why you would want to know that, because obviously for those who don't know, historically there is a lot of political enmity between Korea and Japan.
Yeah,
Japan, yeah,
unfortunately,
Japan
yeah.
for a long time was an imperialist power in the
Mm.
Pacific, and they took over Korea. The Korea as was, I believe. I think Korea was like one Korea at the time that this happened.
Yeah. What one Korea under one
Hmm.
Korean
Yeah,
son.
and there are still, I believe, there are actually like still people alive who either lived under the Japanese occupation or had parents who
Mm.
did.
Yeah,
So you can kind of see, because this comes up sometimes when explicitly Korean characters are associated by clueless fandom with memes and tropes that generally apply to Japanese characters. Like I've seen
yeah.
this come up with Diva from Overwatch, where people have like it's not
Oh
it's
yeah,
kind of
shit,
not
yeah.
cool to call Diva like a weeboo because
I mean,
by
it's not cool to call Genji a weeaboo either.
no,
Let's
but
be
Genji is
honest. Like,
actually Japanese, so it's stupid to
yeah,
call him a weeboo because he is actually Japanese. Whereas it's kind of shitty to call Diva a weeboo because it's like you're then implying that she doesn't, she absolutely does not have this
yeah,
obsession with a country that is like traditionally her country's like oppressor. And that's weird and
yeah.
fucked up to do. And also, like,
Mm,
it's relevant to tell them that because that's probably not what they intended. So I can kind of get
yeah,
why you would have wanted to ask that question if you were like worried, oh, okay, the like two battling ideals are, is Keith Korean or is Keith Japanese? Because obviously I got to come down on one side or the other. Kind of. It still doesn't really
yeah.
fucking matter.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. Like, and I was just
Mm.
asking, like, so I knew that there were people in the fandom who were Korean and who were
Right.
well of Korean descent and who were of Filipino descent, or like, and I wanted to hear
Yeah.
their opinions on it because I value them as
Well,
my
it's like there's
friends and as my
multiple
fans.
different mistakes you could make here as well, right? Because you were
Yeah,
like, I'm going to have to come down on one side of this or another if I'm going to have this character in this AU. But I want
yeah,
those people to understand that by coming down on that side, on one of those sides, I am either
mm,
saying Keith is Korean or Keith is Japanese. I am not saying the Koreans and the Japanese are basically functionally identical because
yeah,
that is a shitty thing to say. Even to
yeah.
be honest, it would be a shitty thing to say even if there weren't like this history of imperialism on Japan's part towards Korea.
Mm. Yeah, but like as well, it complicates it when you talk about Asian Americans because of course Korean Asians and Japanese Asians marry each other in America, and it's not this. It wouldn't be the same issue as it was if these people were living in
Yeah,
Korea or Japan
I
because
believe
it's
also that like actual Japanese and Korean people marry each other, but again, that is a different thing.
yeah, and it's I was sort of like but I'm like but that also seems a really complicated backstory
Mm.
to give a a character.
For
So
no
it's
like
maybe
no
it's better.
narrative purpose, basically for like a metatextual compromise. No, that's
Yeah,
stupid.
for
Don't do
like
that.
basically just for like a character that shows up in one scene and then goes
Yes.
away. Like, and I think I gave the fairly neutral name Hannah, which I know is a Korean and a Japanese forename
Yeah.
a woman
All
can
right.
have.
That's fine.
I went with that, and I think that that's fine. Maybe she is like married to a Japanese man, and that's why she has the surname Kogane. Maybe she's not. Maybe she's Japanese. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's
Yeah.
fine. It's fine. Because
I don't.
I mean, I also it gets and nobody, for the record, nobody's complained about it or has taken any issue
And
with
again,
it, which is
to
fine.
be clear, like this like degree of granularity, I would argue, does not actually exist in a lot of fandoms outside the Voltron Legendary fandom, as reported. But also is going to be different in fandom when it comes to making like publicly facing art than it is like doing tabletop role playing. You do not have to. Not have to think in this level of granularity about aspects of characterization unless you really want to, or if the character is important in a tabletop role playing game. Please do not. You will stop yourself from ever like writing anything for your setting. Obviously, if your players call you up on it and like point out like an unfortunate like thing,
unfortunate implication,
then feel free to like put a little more thought into that. I think in Playing Outside Yourself, I talked about how I've gradually like started bringing Galliena around, at least in like content you've not really seen yet, to being a slightly more sympathetic villain, because I suddenly realized that I was uncomfortable with the idea of like the most evil being in all creation being a chronic pain sufferer.
Yeah, I think as well. We're moving more or less from marginalized groups, I guess, and I kind of was, I guess, inspired by real world events when I wrote the current scenario the players are currently in. Alex is about to find out how drastically I've changed this scenario recently.
So, what do you want me to like do like a rundown of what the scenario is for context for the players, knowing that I will talk about all the stuff that we have actually seen, and then you don't have to like worry about accidentally like
spoiling anything. Yeah. Go
all right. So the party, as is, have come to a city called Gloriana, and there they have discovered that one of the electoral candidates for mayor, who evidently already has some measure of political power, but is not mayor yet canonically, whose name is Maribel, is basically running on a platform of I suppose we would recognize it as neo-fascism, but I don't know if fascism has had like one go around yet into Earth. So maybe just fascism in general.
Oh, that's a good question.
And is she's running on a platform of humans are great and nomads, which is the minority that my character Azrael belongs to, who are sort of like, it's like visually they're black people, but they're also like sort of a Romany.
You say visually they're black people. I always sort of imagine them looking like black people, but also like a cross between like Indians and like Native Americans as well. Like it's a mix of
they're sort of a weird
but
mixed
I get
bag
what you
type
mean.
thing.
Yeah,
that they specifically are like this the supreme form of humanity, and that kind of means that like nomads don't have it as bad as like elves and shit, but it means that they get like fetishized by because being clear, like Maribel is not a nomad, and neither is like anybody in her like core supporter base. So they're basically like, it's kind of like, how like actual neo-Nazis love like Norse shit, even though the vast majority of them are not like Swedish or Norwegian or anything like that. It's kind of like that. And so so Gloriana is being like whipped up into this like bigoted frenzy against like orcs and elves and all of these other like racial minorities who have like different context as to why they exist as racial minorities. And as it turns out, because Azrael, who is a fuck up idiot who makes stupid decisions, decided to try and sleep with her in order to get leverage, Maribel doesn't actually believe in any of that. I don't want to go so far as to say Maribel is not a fascist, but basically Maribel doesn't believe her own bullshit. The reason why Maribel is trying to make Gloriana a fascist is because she is trying to turn herself into like a horrible mantis person, kind of like a Dryder, but like a praying mantis. And the Drow used to do this, and the way that they did it was by surrounding themselves with hatred. Like, they would have, like, magic that activated when they were surrounded with, like, when they basically made themselves, like, racist demagogues. And so that's what she's trying to do. Asriel found this out when his plan to send her into, like, fascist apoplexy didn't work because she didn't care about the thing he did to her. So, not the best time to find out how that sort of thing. So, now we are trying to gather together 3 nomad amulets that come together to make a key to a tomb underneath Gloriana that holds, like, the last being who managed to properly defeat these horrible manted people. And in the meantime, Gloriana is just getting more racist.
Yeah. Now, I wrote this scenario originally, and scenarios, like, I imagine we'll do an episode on it as well about, like, how scenarios and arcs change as they
That's
go
a good
on
idea,
and stuff
actually.
like
Remind
that.
me to write that down when we're done.
Yeah. And initially, because I was looking at, I suppose, the politics around me in the world, I was probably writing this around September, October. That was probably a bit earlier than that. And being like, wow, this Donald Trump's really running on an awful, you know, it was almost sort of a venting thing to want to be like, let's punch some let's beat up some fascists, guys. And then it became really serious because Donald Trump won the election. And I was like, oh crap. And originally the scenario was going to be more about the gangs in Gloriana and the oppression and fighting against that. And I kind of realized a lot of us are now doing it in real life, and that's kind of not amazingly fun. And I was just like, I really, like, this is really exhausting because I'm dealing with it in real life, and I don't necessarily want to bring it with me every Monday night when I have to DM. I was like, how can I make this weird or not the same thing? And or kind of have the same message, but, like, it be different. So Maribel went from, I suppose... And I also kind of realised that Maribel didn't have any end goal other than, like, genocide. And that's not fun.
Maribel went from being a fascist demagogue to being a future horrifying manted monster pretending to be a fascist demagogue.
Yeah, like, she went from... I went, oh, this isn't very fun. And I went, how can I make this fun? And I was like, giant mantids.
And that's great, because it means that we get to do, like, a sort of slightly more traditional... find the MacGuffin fantasy plot. We also get to punch Nazis. That is a thing that happened. Like, I remember there was a scene where Asriel and Coslin got arrested for beating up a pair of characters who were, like, threatening significant violence against, I think, was it Bran? Yeah.
It was Bran,
against Bran for being transgender. And, like, Cos, I think, maybe had a little...
And for also being in a relationship with a centaur.
Yes, also that. So, miscegenation, is that what they call it?
Something like that,
in real life. I don't remember their shitty word for it, and I don't really care. It's a stupid thing to be against, and you are a stupid person for being against it, if you are listening and are. I don't believe anybody who's listening is, to be honest.
No.
But I don't believe that Asriel, like, had any context whatsoever as to who those people were. Like, maybe Coslin had a little bit, but probably not a lot. I think, didn't Bran want us to go there? Or possibly his boyfriend?
Oh, no, yeah. Coslin wanted to go there because he'd found a bit of material from that place at a crime scene.
And we go there, and we were like, we're going to interrogate these people. And we walk in, and they are, like, visibly threatening violence against Bran for being a transgender person in a relationship with a non-human individual. And fucking immediately, Asriel is just like, today is a good day to punch a fascist.
Yeah.
Which is
and
like...
Coslin joins in because, like, why wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Like,
I say, like, being mean and, like, threatening violence, like, they were going to kill him. I am fairly... Because they had a knife, they were making, like, the movements of somebody who is going to kill somebody else in a hate crime attack. I'm like, I don't have a problem with beating this guy up.
Yeah. You know, and Bran had went there initially to confront them because, of course, his boyfriend had been missing for, like, weeks. And... you know, like, his boyfriend who came back was like, yeah, these two did it. And, like, there's a bit of backstory here. Bran is very, very impulsive. And he went, well, I'm going to go there and confront them. And Clyde was like, no, don't, please, God. And Bran was like, I'm already there.
Right.
And and then you guys happen to walk in just at the right moment.
Right. Do we want to just like talk about? I don't want to say political because we've made the point here that like all of our shit is political, but like I guess like more strongly political like storylines that we've done.
Yeah, I mean, I generally like that's probably the only one that I can really think that I'm doing, and most of the other ones, like then like I don't really want to engage with things like I see like I don't really want to engage very strongly with things like socialism and monarchy, right or wrong, or like I don't mind touching upon them, but I don't really want them to be like major themes throughout the story. I'd rather like my themes are more emotional. Like I think I kind of realized the other day one of my big themes was like grief and how people deal with it.
Right.
And like stories and lore and ideas of like the sort of way that I mean like Lucian Bartello's whole thing was that he was split into two people, his true self and a kind of fictionalized, exaggerated version, mad scientist version of himself. And he's not the only character where that the theme of like your true self versus a mask you put on isn't going to come up. Like it's pretty much plainly came up with Maribel as well. There's who Maribel pretends to be, and then there's the truth to who Maribel is. And I like to push that theme a little bit because I find that to me that's the theme of my game, and the theme of the villains is the lie about who we are, and then or the exaggeration or the untruth of who we are, and then the truth of who we are as people. Because I find that more engaging than like this whole game is a metaphor for socialism, which isn't a wrong thing to do, by the way.
No, but no, I think you're quite correct. It's weird. I didn't think of that until you mentioned it, but now like that's exactly what Beth's villains are like.
Yeah,
you're thinking about it, with possibly the exception of Kavan.
Yeah, but you don't.
Well, we don't know a lot about
Kavan
yet, but no. I'm getting the feeling that Kavan is more actively malevolent, I think, than you might expect. Like the others to be. Like Lucian was split in two, and one half was like comically exaggerated in terms of like how evil it was, and then Maribel is pretty evil, but again, she's not like she has an ulterior motive and. She is wearing a mask. Like she's not as fascist as she appears. Yeah,
I mean, even like Kavan wears a literal mask. You know, like it's a far-reaching metaphor, and as well, even some characters like minor NPCs you interact with, like you have Eleanor, I guess she presents this very like.
Eleanor's weird, definitely. Like I would say Valandir as well. Like. Certainly when we first met him, there was this idea that Valandir was Valanthe's like what's the word I'm looking for?
Evil twin.
No, not evil twin. Oh god, not dropout. Dropout is the only word that's coming to me. Deadbeat. Yeah, the Valandir was Valanthe's deadbeat brother who like was tied up in organized crime, basically like. Because he was, you know, this unpleasant person, truly. And as it turns out, that is not the case at all. But for a long time, even like some time into Coslin's relationship with him, Asriel and Harrow, and to an extent Valanthe herself, did not trust him. And did not want to believe that he had reformed. And to an extent he hasn't. It's just that
he's still a criminal,
their perspective on the context of his like behaviors and allegiances has changed, which is fair.
But like even Eleanor initially presented herself as I guess quite a threatening, like I have the power over you kind of character, like a kind of a manipulator, a chess master, and then you know you found out a lot of stuff about her recently. You know she's the mother to a teenage girl who she adopted. She's like severely alcoholic and drinks to cope.
She was abused as a child. Her wife is a tree.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that.
It's like they're like she's not who she presents on the outside, but like you're so far away from that mask now that you fairly much know her as pretty much know her as a character. But like Valentin's a really good example as well, and it will keep popping up this theme of like this is how a character presents themselves. This is how they actually are. You know, because I find that theme intriguing.
I don't know
um,
that my game is that deep, to be honest.
no, it's fine. It's fine if it's like I don't think there's
No,
anything wrong
of
with
course there's
that.
nothing wrong with not having a game that deep, but it is kind of cool that you like keep doing that. I would say
Thank you.
probably the most abjectly political storyline that I have ever
Mm.
done would be the Imperial Civil War,
Yeah, yeah,
because
definitely.
to some extent I wanted to, like, when I decided, okay, the Empire is going to have a civil war, I was like, I don't want the party to immediately rush in and take a side in this civil war and feel that this is a problem that they have to solve. And also, I want to make
Yeah,
the politics, like, kind of A, tie into my lore, and B, like, vaguely realistic. So what you come down with
yeah.
is, okay, so the Elven Empire, as presented now, currently,
Mm.
in my game, in my setting, is the third of its kind, and they
Mm.
iterate the number every time they change their system of government. So you had the first Elven Empire, which had emperors and empresses, and then you had a revolution where the emperors were overthrown, and then you had the second empire, which just had a senate. And now
Mm.
you have the third empire, which is emperors again. And this
Mm.
emperor, who is the first emperor, Titus Duilius, claims to be a descendant of the last emperor, but nobody can really prove that. Um,
Yeah.
but he was basically like a puppet emperor anyway, installed to be the sort of like mouthpiece for all of the people like working behind the scenes. I
Mm.
wonder where I got that idea. I actually had that idea like long before the
Yeah,
real
yeah.
world thing I'm making a reference
Yeah,
to. Although
before
I feel like I have like
before
slightly changed. Like obviously it's mostly in the past in the setting now, but I've slightly changed like references to it when it comes up.
yeah.
And now Salvius Sedicio, one of his generals and one of the people who installed him on the throne in the first place, has become unsatisfied with the level of competence that he has shown as a ruler and the amount of
Mm.
agency he's trying to exert in like making his own decisions about what proclamations to make. Particularly, so elves have this thing where because they were the first species created and the only one created directly by the old gods, they think they're better than everybody,
Mm. Yeah,
which
yeah.
is like a running theme, is
Elves.
that
Yeah.
elves are atheists, like anti-theists,
Yeah.
basically, because
Yeah.
in their opinion, all active religions are heresy, because the
Mm.
old gods are the actual gods that you should worship, and the old gods no longer exist, so there is nobody to worship. So if you are participating in religious worship, and particularly if you're a cleric or a paladin or somebody who receives powers from participating in religious worship, you are a demon cultist and
Mm.
a danger. But they also
Yeah.
have this idea that, with the exception of the Isle of Bells, which is supposed to remain separate because of what their like first leader Isterin did, they just sort of have a right to everywhere, and also like you can't live in the Elven Empire unless you are an elf or a
Mm.
half elf who is the direct descendant, and by direct descendant I mean like immediate descendant of a imperial citizen who is also an
Mm.
elf. So it's elves, and also you can petition for citizenship if you are a half elf and your dad or your mum was an elven citizen, but none of your kids can. It's
Mm.
just you, and that's the emperor's standpoint. He's like, no, the empire is for the elves, so only they can be citizens here. Salvius Sedicio believes basically in manifest destiny and is like this warmonger who wants to invade neighboring countries and take them over, and he doesn't want, because this is the thing you initially hear. You initially hear that Salvius Sedicio wants to get rid of the law that makes it only possible for elves to be elvish
Mm.
citizens, and you think, oh well, that's great. That's better than the emperor. It's like, no, he wants that because it's really, really fucking difficult to take over somebody's country if you first have to exterminate the entire population before you can
Yeah.
take it over. So he wants
Yeah.
to basically make the empire able to absorb other nations because he believes
Yeah.
that it is the divine duty of the empire to continue expanding into neighboring territories.
Yeah. Which, like, and our group being a chaotic group, immediately went, well, fuck both those sides.
Which was
then.
exactly the reaction that I wanted, because I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
like, I wanted them to see both of these people are terrible, theoretically the Emperor is slightly better, because then like
Yeah.
everybody's at least like, but then neither of them are good, right? And I
Yeah.
believe like the other group actually like managed to get rid of both of them, and then resource lock the interim parliament into never electing a new emperor until they basically just turned into a senate. Which happened because one of the party members, you remember I did that thing in Whispers in the Stone, where because you're like in a giant dungeon, I didn't want to introduce new characters externally, so new characters were like people from long ago who got turned to stone, and then you turn them back. One of the characters was a Second Empire Imperial elf who was upset that they had emperors again, and was like key in making sure both of these fuckos died, and that their like interim parliament just couldn't like install a new head of state.
Nice. Yeah. But like that's like that character's obviously going to have a strong
Right,
viewpoint on
exactly,
that.
and that was kind of why I
like,
let them do it. I was like, oh, this is kind of a stupid, like, you know, this is the exact solution to this problem kind of thing. But on the other hand, this character like has a reasonable like motivation for
Yeah.
wanting to do it. So sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like,
Yeah, like-
have you seen the trailer for that new Jackie Chan film?
Yes.
Okay, so for those of you who haven't seen it, there's going to be a new Jackie Chan film called The Foreigner. And it's about Jackie Chan, who, by the way, is, like, obviously not as young as he once was, but still looking great for 63.
Oh, yeah, right. God. 63, really? I would have guessed 55, man.
Playing a character whose daughter gets blown up in a terrorist attack in London. And then... Oh my god.
Jackie Chan fights the IRA.
Except he doesn't. That's the weird thing.
Except he
is
doesn't,
that
not really.
Jackie Chan fights the, I don't know, Irish Rioters Association or something. Definitely not the, you know, Irish Republican Army. And he tries to get information from a former terrorist leader turned like politician.
Who, by the way,
who is played.
Right, Pierce Brosnan bears a striking resemblance to a certain...
That's why they cast him, and yet it's not the same character. It's a Mr. Hannity.
I know, it's like,
you know,
what the fuck?
an Irishman
and it's like,
with like white
like,
hair and a beard and like little round glasses, played by Pierce Brosnan, who already kind of looks like the person that this is obviously supposed to be, except not really.
Yeah, and everyone's like,
we know what this is supposed to. But obviously you
we
can't
know who this
because
is supposed to be.
because there's no legal proof that the narrative presented in the film was actually like the narrative that actually happened in real life to the person in question, and it is important to the politics of Northern Ireland that there is no legal proof of that. So obviously we can't do that for real. So we're just gonna like change all the names and then have it be. I get the feeling from like the trailer that it's probably actually going to be like a small group of like kitchen terrorists rather than like an active paramilitary. So it's not quite Jackie Chan fights the IRA.
Yeah, but it better be. But like, I watched that and I was like, this is Jackie Chan fighting the IRA.
Yeah.
I was like, this is
like,
the premise of this movie.
Like, this is so stupid, but it looks kind of rad, and I'm probably going to watch it. I think actually, one of the things is just, it's kind of a pity that they've obviously had to change all the names because of the subject matter, because Pierce Brosnan is like a dead ringer for the person that he is supposed to not be.
Yeah, he should, look, if they, I don't know if they're ever going to do that within Pierce Brosnan's lifetime, but if they do make a movie about that,
he should
get
and yet
to
now
play
I feel
him.
like maybe he can't, because like he'll try and apply for the part, and then like the studio or whatever will be like, well, you were in The Foreigner playing essentially this character but in a sort of libelous way, so no. We don't want to go there.
You can't, Pierce. And Pierce is like, but I was made to play this part. I have the same face.
And they're like, yeah, you were, and you blew it on The Foreigner. I mean, I hope that doesn't happen, but
no, yeah,
you got to be careful with Northern Irish politics.
I know, yeah. It's the only thing. Like Pierce Brosnan, James Bond, sure, and then that guy.
Yeah. If you're confused listening to us talking about this, and you have not seen the trailer for The Foreigner, and you don't know who we're talking about, first of all, watch the trailer for The Foreigner, because you will see Pierce Brosnan in it, and that may like trip your memory as to who he's supposed to look like. But otherwise, understand that the problem here with it being libelous is that legally the person that this character is supposed to be a reference to, who is now a politician, was not ever legally confirmed to be in the IRA. Like
Yeah,
that
it's
is not a
just
thing that there is, I believe, actual legal evidence for. It is the opinion
yeah.
of a very large number of people in the public, mostly his political opponents, but also some people who perhaps agree with his party, that he in fact was in the IRA. But that is an opinion, and it is not a proven. It is not a proven fact in a court of law, which is, I think, the place where it would have to be proven to matter.
It's look, okay, if you don't know anything about Northern Irish politics and UK politics, there are certain things that we know but we do not acknowledge for the peace of the
Especially
realm.
when it comes to Northern Ireland, which has a very.
Mm.
This is going to sound super disingenuous based on what happened literally just this week, but especially not in Northern Ireland Irish politics, which has a very fragile peace, largely held together with sticky tape and not acknowledging what people did in the 1970s.
Yeah.
And also, Theresa May just gave the Democratic Unionist Party £1 billion to prop up her own, to leverage her own failing brand, as I believe weird Twitter legend Drill once put it.
Yeah, weird because isn't it weird how they were saying that there's no money tree, and then they found all this money from this money tree?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Hmm.
I did like the joke.
Almost...
do you see the joke that was like, I always looked at my payslip and I never really understood what NI contributions meant, but now I do.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we need to get into summing up this episode a little
probably, because it is quite
if
late.
we can. We're running a bit late. I would say, obviously, look, you can't avoid putting politics into your
cannot.
games.
Like, anything that you
cannot.
do would be political. I would say if there's a point to this episode, it's that what you can and can't put into, well, not even what you can, what you should and shouldn't put into, like, knowingly, what you should and shouldn't intentionally put into your game is going to depend on your own personal politics, the stories you want to tell, and the politics of the people that you are creating the game world for, because there is a difference between challenging your players politically and making them actively uncomfortable by putting them into a contentious environment. And obviously, that's going to change based on whether you're playing with a group of people you know, who are all of one particular political persuasion, in which case, maybe do something like that. Or if you're playing with people you don't know, or people of a variety of political persuasions, in which case maybe you want to go like a bit, not apolitical, because we've established that isn't a thing, but like more centrist, more safe.
Yeah. Or, and there are ways of putting in political things subtly, of course. Like, I mean, this is the reason why analogies exist, isn't it? It's why, there's no real actual racism based on the colour of people's skin in D&D. It's all about
heritage,
whether you're an elf or a dwarf or a human. Like, there are prejudices based on those
which
things.
Which is not to say that you can't, like, insert actual, like, colorism into D&D.
No, yeah.
Although
obviously.
You probably only ought to do that if that thing that we just, like, spent ages talking about, where you, like, set up hurdles that are, like, comparable to real life ones in order to, like, portray them getting knocked down. Because otherwise, that might be kind of shit for people at your table for no real effective gain for you.
Yeah, and it's like, like this is why analogies exist, because it's like you're able to engage with themes that maybe you want to engage with, but you can do it at a standpoint where it's a bit removed, so you're not making the heaving racist in your party uncomfortable. But, like, I don't know, maybe you should be playing D&D.
Yeah, I feel like there's a certain amount of this that goes into, like, curate your group, but the point is, change the content of your, like, game depending on who you're playing it with. There is nothing wrong with doing that.
Yeah.
Especially, like, if you're playing with randoms in a public space, it is fine to have a game that obviously is still political, because, as we've established, you can't have a non-political game, but is, like, centered in the Overton window and is not, like, particularly controversial either to the right or to the left on really any issue, or to the other, like, axes of the political spectrum either, I suppose.
And I think as well, if you're playing with your friends, even if they don't necessarily agree with you on points that you might make or morals you may tell, they're your friend, and if they respect you and if you respect them, which is the, like, respect is a two-way street, it's got to go both ways. Like, I couldn't put something overtly, I would never do this, but overtly anti-Semitic in my game and expect a particular member of our group to not take that lying down. You know what I mean? Like,
Similarly,
I would
I feel
expect.
like you couldn't put something actively, racist against black people or mixed race people in and not have. Well, I
No,
mean,
yeah,
realistically, all of us complain because fuck that. But like a specific person
yeah,
complain.
yeah. Like, you can't put some. I couldn't put something like that in my game and not have that person go, "Yo,
Mm.
hold on a minute." I would expect that, but that's not respecting my friends. That's not
No,
respecting them as a person. But like that's it. I put like you should like an opinion like I can't think of a fucking example because we generally all agree
this is
with
the
each other
big
most of the
problem: is that
time.
we are reasonably close friends and generally agree on a lot of things.
Yeah.
I mean,
Uh.
like maybe theoretically, like one of our friends, I think we can agree is. I feel like this was a lot more relevant like a year ago. Like I feel like I've become much more radically left in the past year. But
Same. Yeah.
one of our friends is, let's say, a much more enthusiastic socialist than either of us, to the point where it
Yeah.
becomes exhausting. And so I suppose, well, I mean, it does. Come on.
and, and, and yeah, in
It's
an
not like we
but
really disagree with a
affectionately.
lot
Yeah,
of the
it's not
things that
like
they're saying. It's just that like it's just this oncoming tide that is
yeah.
especially following their Facebook.
No, it's like sometimes like they will joke about gulags and stuff like that, and I don't think that's an okay thing to joke
No,
about because
I feel like the sort of
like
like
communism has hurt people. Like it has
yeah, I
like
feel like
parties
the sort of
saying
like
that
tanky
has hurt
tendencies are
people.
not like the best.
Yeah. And I think that's not right because I do think that like people do have legitimate concerns with communism or indeed parties claiming to
Well,
be
yeah, that's the thing.
communist
I think like a
because they
lot of their
have been like
concerns
they come from
are
countries that have been hurt by those
right. I think a lot of
regimes.
people have
You know.
concerns with the potential implementation of communist regimes because, like, even if
Yeah.
they agree and believe that at some point those regimes lost their way on the way to, like, true communism and true socialism, they're like, well, what guarantee do we have that you'll not do the same thing?
Yeah. It's like if like obvious like if in a let's say a person from Middle America was talking shit about communism and they clearly didn't understand what they were talking
Right.
about, that's different. But if somebody is like, say, they lived in Miami and they're from a Cuban family and their family was literally like pushed out of Cuba because of communism, that's different. Their opinion is more
Weirdly, when
valid.
people make general vague assertions that they don't like elaborate on, the
Yeah.
context of who that person is and why they might be saying that thing matters. It's like
Yeah.
that thing about how it's like, are you really going to delete that post because you know now that it comes from a turf? And it's like, yeah, because that changes the context of what they're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And it's like and sometimes what makes that really frustrating, like I remember that there's this one really great post, but unfortunately it's by a
Mm,
fucking turf, and she goes, like the reason why things like this and this like that aren't researched into, it's because they're problems that women face
mm,
in general. And later on, a lot of non-binary people and a lot of trans people add really good points to that post about, yeah, you're absolutely correct. People who are, designated female at birth
mm,
and the medical issues they have, they're less researched into because of this and this
mm.
and this. Those additions are really great, but it's really weird knowing that a turf started that. That's what annoys me about that
This is the
post.
thing. Is like, I don't want. Again, I don't want to get like on too much of a tangent.
No, yeah.
People talk a lot about separating the artist and the art, and I don't. I don't personally believe in doing that at all. I think.
I mean, I'm of two minds of it, and I
I think
think,
again. I think that's a vague thing to say, and
yeah.
like
I
being
mean,
more specific
I think
helps.
this is something that we've said that we disagree on this. I'm a firm believer in like death of the author. Once a piece of work
Mm.
is out there, it belongs to the fans, and it's their interpretation that
But
is
I also
is also
think
to be of
that
equal
like
value.
the reason for the production of a piece of art ultimately comes down to the personal context of the author. And another completely unrelated reason why I have difficulty separating the author from the work is that a lot of time when the author is still alive and holds the rights to the work, any kind of
Yeah.
financial engagement with the work funds that creator. And if that
Yeah.
creator is
No.
actively using funds that they have to do something that politically you disagree with, then it is your
No. Yeah. I
responsibility
understand.
not to
Yeah.
engage with their work financially.
Yeah. I understand you. I'm gonna say Attack on Titan by name because this is the thing I'm thinking of.
Okay, I actually wasn't
understand.
thinking about Attack on Titan, but
I know. I know.
that's fair.
I know. I understand the people who like, and even I don't want to engage monetarily with Attack on Titan anymore. I don't want to buy the manga. I don't want to watch the
To
anime.
be
I was going to say
I get that we
watch the
should maybe
anime legally.
illuminate people who maybe don't
Ah,
understand
yes.
what
For
like
those
what's the problem
for
with
those
Attack
of
on
you who
Titan.
don't
The
know,
creator of Attack on Titan is a proponent of Japanese imperialism and of
and
fascist ideology in general, and initially this was
yeah,
just like a problematic thing about him, but apparently the like later aspects of Attack on Titan itself have like
it's
started
not
to pick
it's
up
not even the
themes of that.
it's not even the later aspects of it. It is very much having read a post about it, like one was like I didn't really understand what they were talking about and it was like 5 pages too long, and then someone did it in like plain speak and I was like, of course this is the world of Attack on Titan is completely 100% an analogy for the rise of the Third Reich and militarism
Not even like necessarily like
in Germany.
historically, but also like in terms of the specifically Japanese imperialist lens of the duty of expansionism, of
Yeah,
like particularly the Axis power countries.
yeah, but like it's a very, you read Attack on Titan and you're like, oh, this is about the Third
Hmm.
Reich, and it does it in and it's through positively,
But
like,
again,
and
it's yeah.
but like that, and knowing that about Hajime Sama, that becomes very obvious. You're like, oh shit, yeah.
Hmm.
But then like you look at the way people responded to it and the way fans respond to it, and I also understand why Attack on Titan is given some credit and some fans are able to remove that aspect
Well,
from it,
that's the
because I
thing
also
is that
see.
first of all, because it's written from a position that is sympathetic to the well, to the aspect of the analogy that's supposed to represent the Third Reich, it doesn't
Mm,
include the power dynamic that we have generally come to associate with like Nazism and the Axis powers in general, which means that
mm,
a lot of people initially would not recognize that and also would like have difficulty making that connection even after the revelation. And also like if
yeah.
you subtract it entirely from its cultural context as a piece of weird fantasy, a lot of the time it's fine. I have heard that like it slowly becomes less ignorable as like
Yeah,
the
I
manga
I
goes
would agree
on,
with
and
that
that the
much
anime
later
is
on.
probably
Yeah,
going to eventually hit that point.
yeah. Like well, if you're only watching in the anime, we haven't hit that point yet, but it does get there pretty gradually. And I wouldn't actually, if the anime may change that, because despite what you think, not every person in Japan and in the anime industry is like a heaving
Well, I
imperialist
mean, like,
nationalist. But
wasn't
anyway,
that like reasonably controversial when it came out in Japan itself?
I don't
I,
citation
I, I
needed.
actually do not know. If you
Yeah,
are from
I wouldn't
Japan
know.
and happen to know how exactly like tacit support for the imperial regime circa 1945 is viewed in general Japanese
Mm,
life, please let us know on our Twitter
mm,
or Tumblr because we would be quite interested in
yeah.
that. Um,
No, yeah, I think certainly. But it's like I totally understand when people um have the. But again, I understand when people take a different interpretation to it,
if
because
you
a
want to
lot of
give
the.
Beth some lessons in paying attention to segues, then maybe you should contact us on our Twitter or
Sorry,
our Tumblr.
sorry. Yeah, sorry, but it's like, do you know what?
No,
Sometimes like,
yeah.
and that's
I
just the
think
thing. It's
again
like,
there are two sides to this, and it's like I feel
mm,
like maybe my opinion of like the degree to which a creator and their work can be
mm.
separated is influenced by the times I have been asked to do that and the particular creators and the particular pieces of work that
That's
I
a
have
pretty
been.
significant thing as well, isn't it? Like people generally don't ask you to say
Hmm.
separate J.K. Rowling's political views from Harry
I
Potter,
mean, they
because
ask you to do that more now because
more now, but
J.K. Rowling
even
is like a milk toast neoliberal, and a lot of Harry Potter has like anarchist themes in it, which is weird.
yeah, but I kind of think that that's maybe just where she is as she's gotten
I think
older
so because I think like
and stuff.
definitely like J.K. Rowling did not start as a milk toast neoliberal. Like
No, I
she the story people love to tell is that like when she started writing Harry Potter, she was like on was it job seekers allowance?
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I say
yeah,
job seekers allowance. It wouldn't have been that back in like 1993.
yeah. But she was on like welfare
Yeah.
to some extent, but it was very 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 threadbare at the time.
Yeah.
In John under
Exactly.
John Major.
So,
Um,
I'm not so foolish as to think that J.K. Rowling's political views have remained
no,
constant.
it just happens as you get older, and as well, she's very rich
It's
now.
true.
Um,
I feel like it doesn't happen as much as you get older, as a lot of the people who got like that
mm,
as they got older like to claim. I feel that
mm,
that is not true and a convenient excuse. But
you know,
definitely there are like reasons why that might happen.
and it's just one of these things like your priorities change as you get older and stuff like that,
Hmm.
which is sad because as you get older, you become more prominent in society and your voice like
That is an
grows
issue.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that. It's like shout out to Jezza all these years for
Hmm.
remaining very socialist. Anyway, but it's like but generally you don't get asked to accept that of somebody who's more centrist or left
It's
leaning. You
it's
do get
true.
asked that of people like Orson Scott Card, who's very
Well,
homophobic. Yet people go, "Oh no, it's fine to like end his game because you could just." And it's like, yeah, but he's a real piece of shit.
also, he is, despite what I assumed, still alive and therefore still gets paid for like some. I
Mm,
believe he doesn't get paid for the film because he like waived all his rights to the like money for
yeah,
that, but he still gets paid if you buy his books. And I do
yeah,
not like Orson
and
Scott Card as a person, and I don't
yeah,
want to buy his art until he's dead.
yeah, and
Grim as that
it's like I
sounds.
yeah. And it's like I understand that to some extent,
To
and
be honest, I feel like
but as
even if
well,
he is like even when he is dead, I'm gonna look up like what his will says he wants done with the proceeds from his work in his estate.
dang, yeah,
Because
yeah. But it's like look, I love a lot of Disney
hmm,
movies, but Walt Disney was a piece of shit.
you don't
Okay,
even have to
like
go as far back as Walt Disney was a piece of shit. Like the Disney Corporation is pretty horrific.
yeah, like the Disney now is a piece of shit, but Walt Disney was also a piece of shit. But I still love Disney, and I will fucking eat up every Disney movie I can get my
Right.
hands on. Like, you know, like Marvel right now are just run by piece of shits. Okay, so is DC, but DC are being less piece of
Yeah.
shits lately. It's cyclical, and but I still love Marvel's characters. I still enjoy some of the content they put out, and I'm not gonna be like oh, Marvel have a very like suspiciously pro-Nazi stance lately, so I'm not going to buy any of their comics. I'm like, no, because Black Panther is fucking brilliant. Miss Marvel is fucking brilliant. America Chavez is fucking brilliant. Gwenpool is fucking brilliant. So many good Marvel
Mm.
comics right now that are coming from creators who do need your support, who are from marginalized
Yeah.
groups. Like
And it's like
Iceman isn't
if
very good,
people
but it's
en
one
masse
like
buy stuff that is from creators and depicts like people who are from marginalized groups and pointedly do not buy the things that have like veered into weirdly fascist sympathizy territory, then
mm,
that sends a much stronger message to Marvel than it does to like just stop buying their shit altogether with no real explanation.
yeah. And I mean, like Marvel have basically been ignoring, like they have been ignoring, like whatever they say about diverse books not selling, it's a lie because two of their most critically acclaimed books are Miss Marvel and Black Panther, and they do really well. And one is about a teenage Pakistani
Like,
like
mm,
Muslim girl who honestly kind of comes off as a little bit bi sometimes, but Willow G. Wilson doesn't want to like go like hammer it down or whatever. But the cast in itself that she surrounds herself with is very diverse.
and then Black
And
Panther
Black
is black, but like the film's
is
coming out.
is
You know about Black Panther. Come on.
yeah, you know who T'Challa
Yeah.
is, okay? If you don't know who T'Challa is, you need to educate yourself.
Right.
Like like as well, like an aside, but like the Black Panther mythos and what Black Panther brings to the table in the MCU is really like unique and different. And there isn't really anything like that in comics.
Mm.
It's a little bit like he's a bit like Wonder Woman in that
Mm-hmm.
aspect. Because Wonder Woman gives this really unique bit to DC's lore. Like I imagine there are a lot of people who watched Wonder Woman and was like, oh, I didn't know this was in DC Comics. I didn't know this was a part of DC's lore. I didn't know there was like an Amazonian island and Greek gods and
Yeah.
shit in it. And there's probably a lot of people who watch Black Panther and go, wow, I didn't know this was in Marvel Comics. This is fucking
Yeah.
awesome.
And it's like
Because these.
I think we don't really have time to go into this strongly now, but check out Beth's Tumblr at Baroness Banff for more introspection on the comic book industry. I think there's also some like cool stuff about why comic sales numbers are not always as helpful as they could be if you go back far enough. Like somebody like once sent her like a snotty ask about that, and she like went into detail about it. I thought that bit was cool. Like I don't even go here. I don't know a lot about comics. Definitely, like, my brother is more of an enthusiast than I am, and even he like dabbles only a bit. But I found that bit super interesting.
Yeah, like for those of you, for the uninitiated, for those of you who don't know, comic sales are basically finalized like 3 months in advance, and it's only the pre-orders that get put in, and then a comic book shop has to decide how many of the actual units they want to order to put on the shelves to sell.
And that's the only statistic that the producers of the comic books get. They don't get statistics about how many specific like individual readers bought a comic from comic shops. And they probably do get statistics from online downloads, but for some reason don't use them.
Yeah, they count them as separate things. Online sales and digital sales and floppy sales are counted separately, and they for some reason consider floppy sales more important, even though a smaller number of those are bought. Like Miss Marvel basically has consistently topped digital sales ever since it came out.
I mean,
and that's why she's still around. Basically, is they can't ignore the amount of money she makes for them. The other thing as well is they don't count international sales, so they only count sales in America. And they, that's basically, they're excluding a huge chunk of their market. They don't include.
I said we were going to wrap up, but like I have a vague idea why that is, and this is a thing that really, really fucking bothers me about the WWE recently.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you may have seen it like scrolling across the screen last episode in that like one joke I did, but I'm really fucking done with the SmackDown storyline of Randy Orton versus Jinder Mahal. I mean, I think it's probably actually done now because I don't actually watch Raw or SmackDown because you need like TV to do that, and I only have the network. It's not worth getting Sky just to watch wrestling, especially when it's currently this bad. But like for like I want to say like 3 pay-per-views it was a thing, and it was just this really stupid 80s style, like it put me in mind of the Iron Sheik how bad it was, because Jinder Mahal is I don't actually know if he's from India. I know he's Canadian Indian, like not First Nations, as in like one of his parents is Canadian and the other is from India, and his character, like the Jinder Mahal character, is this huge guy in like a loose turban who is always overlaid with like very Indian sounding like Bollywood music when he speaks on promos, and he talks about how he doesn't fit your stereotypes, and he is a heel, he is a bad guy. His heel motivation is believing racism exists because I don't know, man, it's like SmackDown used to be good. And his opponent for like the whole time that he's been like brought up to this level has been Randy Orton. Randy the Viper Orton, who looks like the default character from any given wrestling game before you do anything to him. Like, I hate Randy Orton. He has no... Like, I used to just, like, not mind him, but not, like, think he was great. I really do not like him now. Like, his entire, like, face motivation was, I am from America. Legitimately, like, they would do these random hard cuts to people in like Stars and Stripes garb in the crowd like during his promos, and it was incredibly obnoxious. And I'm just like, look, guys, I know the United States is your core audience, but the entire reason why the WWE exists is because Vince McMahon wanted to end territory wrestling. That's legitimately the reason why it exists. Like the WWF existed as a unifying presence that ended the age of territory wrestling. You've got to stop doing this. You have to stop doing this we can just run like America fuck yeah storylines thing. And I have heard, by the way, that because they're moving into India as like a territory now, when I say territory, like as in the thing that they ended, I mean like in America, where you'd have like, you know, the South, not even the Southwest, like, you know, state territories and stuff like that. They ended that, especially like when it came into the age of television. They're moving into India now. Like they moved into China a while back, and there was that video that people shared around about John Cena speaking fluent Mandarin. That was kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're moving into India now, and they always like make a point of saying, hey, we've got like an Indian announce team when they do the roll call of like foreign language announce teams. That's kind of cool. I have heard that in India this storyline is represented the other way around. Jinder is the face and Randy is the heel.
That's the way it should be represented anywhere. Jinder Mahal is right. Racism doesn't exist.
It. I think the point they're really like ham-fistedly trying to push this across. I think the point is supposed to be that because Jinder believes that racism exists, he basically uses it as his excuse for anything going wrong in his matches. Because all heels have this like excuse that they use as to, you know, that's why like that loss didn't count, right? And I think they've been like, oh yeah, that's a perfectly normal and fine excuse to give Jinder Mahal. It's like, no, it isn't. It's not especially when you're having his opponent be like, I'm better than that guy because I am from this place. And it's like, no, that's not, you're not allowed, you can't do that. You can't.
It is bad and
you
uncool.
Can't do that, not only because it's kind of racist, especially when that horrible promo when Randy says that his granddad would box his ears for losing the belt to a guy like Jinder. And I'm like, what the fuck is that supposed to mean, Randy? I say, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? We all know what that's supposed to mean. I mean, like, he probably didn't mean it that way, but it's almost exactly the same as, like, things that racists actually say when they want to be euphemistic. But not only that, but also because they can't be like, you know, this is a race thing, they're like, this is a nationality thing. Randy is from the United States, where most of our audience come from. Therefore, he is better. And I'm like, cool, that's like a giant middle finger to your entire international audience. Like, not just the Indians, like literally anybody who is not from the United States. It's so bad. And it really, really bothered me. And I'm kind of glad that since Randy, I think, had his rematch, they're probably not going to be fighting anymore. But man, it was bad. Money in the Bank 2017 was very bad for a lot of reasons, but that one storyline really fucking annoyed me.
Yeah. So, to segue really to the end of this video, it's whatever you do, it's going to be political. The point is that it's got to be
pay attention
measured.
To that,
pay attention.
Try and take control of that as much as you can.
Yeah. You know, and look, if you do fuck up and put something in ignorance and you put a political message in there that you weren't intending,
people will tell you, know, it's fine because you probably only have like an audience of like 6 people and you can fix it. These people are ostensibly your friends, or at least understanding. And it's not the same as when you do that kind of thing like to a massive, like, potentially, if you're on the internet, worldwide audience. So absolutely do not be afraid to like try different stuff. And just like work to what you think the political sensibilities of your group would be. And if you're going to rock the boat, try and rock the boat in controlled ways. I'm not saying like never put anything that challenges your players politically into your game, but try not to just be like, oh man, I don't really fucking care about what kind of politics I put into my game that might make people uncomfortable. Try and be like, yes, I'm going to put this thing in here specifically to challenge them. Remember also, because I feel like we never talked about this, a lot of the time, because your players are interacting with it, you don't necessarily have to provide the answers to the questions that you're asking. You can ask the question and then let them find the answer.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I hope we've answered, like, covered this topic well. To be honest, we may have to revisit it in the future. It's a broad
I feel
topic.
Like, although we're probably going to come back to this sort of thing, like we kind of already did it with playing outside yourself a little bit, so we might come back to this sort of thing. We're not going to do this topic again. This is the episode on this topic. Oh god, I am so already exhausted by the amount of not even the amount, like the kind of feedback we might get on this. But it was an important episode to do.
Yeah, and it's important. Like, all work is going to be political, but it's really important to remember, as we've said multiple times, that in D&D, the circle you reach, it's not that big. No. So any harm you do, either accidentally or intentionally, but if you do this intentionally to your friend, you are a shithead.
Yeah.
But accidentally, it's not going to be huge.
Right. It is not the end of the world if you fuck up in like what you include in your D&D game.
It's not yeah, it's not the end of the world if you make one of your friends a little bit uncomfortable and they have to go, can we talk about what you just did?
Yeah.
Because what you did just
Although,
wasn't
if you
cool.
do notice that you're making your one of your friends a bit uncomfortable and they don't say anything, maybe try talking to them about it, because you don't. We didn't really talk about the intra-party dynamic, but like you don't want to like let that fester. Basically, if you one would hope that you like want to know if you fucked up and could do better next time. Like maybe they tell you a thing and they're like, this thing made me uncomfortable for this reason, and sometimes you're like, okay, well, I will not do that anymore, thank you for telling me. And sometimes maybe if the person is too different from you, or it is like kind of unpleasant, you're like, actually, I don't care that made you uncomfortable, and I think you're kind of shitty for letting it do so. I mean, when you're being again, I think the recurrent theme of this episode, when you're being as vague as that, it's going to include a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and it's fine.
It's
okay.
it's fine. So shout out to Lysmith, who gave us the topic idea. Your game sounds pretty neat, so I hope it goes off well. So you can contact us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Twitch at Cleaver Crummish for me and Baroness Bamf for Beth. Probably best to hit Beth up on Twitter or Tumblr if you want like a longer form response. Her Twitch is not
like me and Tumblr have been. We've had
she's active on it. We can say that much. I don't know necessarily.
Yeah, I'm still active on it. Like, it's still there, but it's like, I guess I prefer Twitter.
If it's a short thing, hit her up on Twitter, because that seems to be the preference.
Yeah.
I don't personally care. Beth's Twitch is not really active at the moment, but mine is, and you can go and watch me at twitch.tv/Cleaver Crummish. I stream on Thursday and Sunday evenings. Sundays we are still playing Baldur's Gate. I am still doing silly voices for most of the characters that we encounter that do not have their own voice acting.
Are you gonna play Dream Daddy on stream eventually?
I mean,
is that?
I don't know, but maybe. It will depend on like when I can fit it. Well, when I get it, and also when I can fit it into my streaming schedule. But I feel I could do, yeah.
I mean, I'm like, I think I may have just enough money coming my way to buy that game the day it comes out. So I'm very excited.
Thursdays, I am currently playing Clive Barker's Undying, which is charming, and actually not entirely devoid of opportunities for silly voices, as I have found out, although it includes many of its own, actually. The main character has a really, really terrible Irish accent. It's fun, come watch it. So yes, the music, as always, was by Kevin MacLeod. I have no idea what the background image behind the text is, but you will see a credit for it in the video description.
I can't even possibly imagine what the background image is going to be.
I've no idea. But thank you very much for listening to this episode of House of Bards, and I've no idea when the next one will be, but we will see you then. So bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.